Hello everybody and welcome to the Blender interface. In this video we'll be going over the basics of the Blender interface. Throughout this course I'll be going into more detail than is shown in this video, so don't worry too much about the specifics. Here in your default Blender scene you probably see a cube in your scene right here, along with two other objects, a lamp and a camera. The lamp is used to provide lighting to the scene when you're rendering, and the camera is used to display the render itself. We will go over rendering in a separate video, but since we're focusing on 3D modeling specifically, we won't get into too much detail. Over here to the left is the tool menu. I don't use this menu all that often since I prefer to use shortcut keys, which we will go over as well, but if you do use this menu, you could simply select your object, and with your cursor you can move it around. You could rotate it, and you could scale it. And right here is a create menu, and in this create menu we can create certain meshes, curves, lighting, and other objects. The other menus present in this tool menu are not important when learning Blender for the first time, so don't worry too much about them. In this top right hand scene menu, you can find objects that are currently present in the scene. Currently, a camera is in the scene, a cube is in the scene, and a lamp is in the scene. You can also select the objects in the Blender scene via this menu, and as you can see, whenever I select them in this menu, they also select in the Blender scene itself. So that can come in handy. Below this menu, we have many different tabs to choose from. For the purpose of this video, I won't be going into heavy detail about each menu because it would simply take up too much time. This camera tab here contains all of the rendering properties. You primarily use this menu when creating animations, editing video, and when rendering models. If you're solely interested in 3D modeling, then this menu is probably not going to be very important to you. This tab here is the Render Layers tab. Right now it's not too important. This tab here is the Scene tab, which is currently not too important. This here is the World tab, currently not too important. This here is the Object tab, and this contains the data relating to the selected mesh object, in this case the cube. You can do things such as edit the rotation, scale, and location. Don't worry too much about the rest, that is just generally what you can do in this tab. Here is the Object Constraints tab, which is not too important for this basic course. Here is the Modifiers tab, arguably one of the most convenient tabs here, where you can do things such as efficiently duplicate objects, and a lot more. This here contains the mesh data. I usually only use this tab for vertex groups, which we will go over later on. This here is the Materials tab. This tab is very useful for creating materials or colors for your models. We will go over this tab later on in a dedicated video relating to materials. This here is the Textures tab. You can deal with textures and texture creation with this tab. Currently it is not too important. This here is your Particle System tab. Currently it's not too important either, but it is useful for creating things such as grass, hair, leaves for trees, and much, much more. This here is the Physics tab. You can do some pretty cool stuff here and helps a ton when creating complex objects, such as realistic blankets or pillows, but for the purpose of this course, it will not be covered. Down here on the bottom is the Timeline. This is mainly used for animation, but I also personally sometimes use it when working with physics. Now pay close attention to this part, since this part is especially important. Here you can change between object mode and edit mode. You will have a separate lecture on these two modes, but object mode and edit mode are the most important modes you will be working with in 3D modeling. Here you can change the viewport shading modes. Try messing around with them and kind of intuitively see what they do. It's pretty interesting. Here you can change the pivot points for your object. Here is the 3D manipulator. and you can just change it, and you can rotate instead, you can scale, and you can move. But generally I just keep it here on translate because I just use shortcut keys such as rotate, scale, and grab, so I don't really ever change these unless I need to. Here is the layers tab. More on that later on, but generally what you can do is you can just pretty much use a new scene within the scene you are currently working on. Nothing too complicated about it, but we will have a dedicated video for this layer menu. Here you can change what your object snaps to. More on that later as well. That will be in a separate video. If you press N, this opens the properties menu. You can do things such as edit the location, rotation, and scale and dimensions of your objects, among other things. Now, this generally covers the entire Blender interface. Don't worry, because it probably still looks pretty daunting, but by the end of this course you will feel a lot more comfortable with it.